You know that moment. I mean, we've all been there. You're sitting across from a child, maybe you're a parent trying to help with homework at the kitchen table, or you're an educator running a lesson.
Right, the classic setup.
Exactly. And you've prepared everything. And for the first few minutes, it's going great.
Oh yeah, smooth sailing.
But then right around the 10-minute mark, you watch it happen.
The shift.
The shift. They start tapping the pencil. They shift in their seat. Their eyes drift to the window, and they are completely glazed over, just totally zoning out.
Yeah, they're gone.
And the frustration just bubbles up. You feel like you're failing. Or worse, you feel like they just aren't trying at all.
Which is such a terrible feeling for both of you.
It really is. But what if I told you that 10-minute glaze over isn't bad behavior? It is actually pure biology.
This is such an important distinction.
It's massive. So today we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating educational framework from two educators, Lori and Eric. It's called CRS1 Lesson Script V1.3, and it completely dismantles everything we thought we knew about kids' attention spans.
It really tears it down to the studs.
Yeah. We're going to figure out exactly how long kids can actually focus and learn how to structure learning to work with their biology rather than against it. Because the mission here is to entirely remove that guilt and that frustration from your life.
And it is so liberating once you understand it.
Okay, let's unpack this because to make this work, we really have to let go of the biggest false belief adults hold about children and learning.
We really do. The framework Lori and Eric lay out, it requires a profound paradigm shift.
A total 180.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The central revelation is this. When a child cannot sit and focus for 45 to 60 minutes, it is absolutely not a discipline problem.
It's not them being defiant.
No, not at all. It is a biological mechanism. A child's focused attention span is dictated by their physical neurological development, period.
Wow.
And working with that biology produces actual retention.
Yeah.
But fighting against it, that produces nothing but stress and burnout.
I want to highlight a brilliant analogy from Lori in the text that I think perfectly captures this reality. She says, telling them to focus harder is like telling them to grow taller.
I love that line.
It's so good, right?
Yeah.
The hardware simply isn't there yet. But I do have to push back a little here, or at least ask the obvious question.
Sure.
If it's just biology, why do we default so aggressively to behavioral blame? Because if you're a parent, the panic sets in so fast. You immediately jump to things like, oh no, does my kid have ADHD? Or maybe homeschooling just won't work for us.
What's fascinating here is the sheer weight of the research Lori and Eric bring forward to explain that mismatch between, our expectations and a child's reality.
Right, because we expect so much.
We default to behavioral blame because we've been conditioned by traditional educational structures to expect long periods of focus. We think, well, school periods are 45 minutes, so they should be able to do this.
Yeah. Right. It's what we grew up with.
Exactly. But the science tells a completely different story. They cite classroom research by Godwin and colleagues, which actually observed thousands of students in traditional elementary classrooms.
And what did they find?
It found that on-task behavior drops off significantly after just 10 minutes of instruction.
Wait, just 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
So when we punish them for staring out the window at the 15-minute mark, we are literally punishing them for having the brain of a 6-year-old.
We are. After just 10 minutes, over 25% of the students in those studies are completely checked out.
A quarter of the class?
Yes. And that number just keeps climbing the longer the lesson runs. Furthermore, neurodevelopmental research by Betts and colleagues demonstrates that the brain's ability to sustain attention develops very rapidly between the ages of 5 and 9.
Okay.
And then it actually plateaus. The attention hardware of a 5-year-old is fundamentally different from that of a 12-year-old.
I think we need to explain what that actually means physically. Because I was thinking about this. Think of their attention span like a smartphone battery that hasn't been fully upgraded yet.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. So a 5-year-old's battery physically only holds a 10-minute charge. If you force them to run a heavy app like math or reading for 45 minutes, the phone shuts down.
It just crashes.
Yeah, it crashes. You have to recharge it with a break.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it. Because the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that governs sustained attention and impulse control, it is quite literally underdeveloped in young children.
It's just not finished growing.
Exactly. When they focus intently on a new cognitive task, their brain burns through its available glucose, its energy, much faster than an adult's brain does.
So the tank literally empties.
It empties. That's why the American Academy of Pediatrics clearly states that children need breaks after concentrated instruction.
And Lori and Eric make a big point about this in the source.
Yes, crucially, these breaks are not a reward for good behavior.
Right.
They are a biological necessity. The brain needs that downtime to synthesize and physically process what it just learned.
So if we know the biology dictates a smaller battery, we really need to know what the actual numbers look like. Lori and Eric created something called the Focus Block Guide based on this research.
Yes, and this is where it gets very practical.
And when you look at the math, honestly, the numbers are staggering.
They really are. When you look at a 5 to 7-year-old, the biological limit for deep focus is just 10 to 12 minutes at a time.
10 to 12 minutes.
That's it. And the guide recommends doing 3 of those blocks a day.
Okay, wait, let me do the math.
That means they are getting about 30 to 36 minutes of total formal brain food for the entire day.
Wait, 30 minutes for the entire day?
Entire day.
How on earth is a child supposed to keep up with state standards or, learn to read if they're only in school for half an hour? I mean, as a parent hearing that, my immediate reaction is that my kid is going to fall hopelessly behind.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the contrast between these biological limits and the standard public school model.
Okay, let's contrast them.
Think about the mathematical absurdity of the traditional system. You have a 6-year-old child whose neurological deep focus limit is about 10 minutes.
Right.
Yet we place them in a 45-minute class, period.
Which begs the question, what on earth are they doing for the other 35 minutes?
Well, the remaining 35 minutes are naturally, inevitably filled with fidgeting, looking around, zoning out, and checking the clock.
Because the battery is dead.
Exactly. And sadly, that perfectly normal biological response gets punished as not paying attention.
That's so frustrating.
The tragic irony is that they were paying attention for exactly as long as their brain was physically capable of doing so.
Wow.
The 30 minutes of total daily brain food works because it is 30 minutes of 100% cognitive engagement.
It's pure concentrated learning.
Right. In a traditional school, they might only be getting those same 30 minutes of actual focus anyway, but it's watered down and spread out across 6 hours of exhaustion and behavioral reprimands.
That is wild to think about. And it doesn't even just apply to little kids, right?
No, even when you get up to teenagers, ages 14 and up, their absolute biological maximum for a single focus block is just 20 minutes at a time.
20 minutes for a high schooler.
Yes. They can do more blocks per day, like 4 to 6 blocks, totaling maybe 80 to 120 minutes, but the single sitting max is 20 minutes.
Okay, so seeing those trend lines on paper is one thing. But if you're hearing these numbers right now, you're probably wondering, does this actually work in practice with wildly different personalities?
Because every kid is different.
Exactly. No two kids are the same. Some kids are fast, some are slow, some are super easily distracted. And this is where Lori and Eric's personal case studies from the source really shine, because they had to figure this out in their own home.
Trial and error.
Yeah, Lori is very honest about their early days. She described it as organized chaos before they implemented timers. It was Eric who introduced the idea of doing this brain food in strict timed blocks.
The real-world application is where we see the theory adapt to the individual. They didn't just force a new, shorter schedule. They built a system that responds to the child.
Let's look at how they adapted it. Their youngest, Jackson, has an absolute sweet spot for reading right at that 20-minute mark.
Okay.
By the end of it, he's getting fidgety, but he successfully finishes. But Lori notes that if she tries to push him to 30 minutes, it results in a total meltdown. And she really emphasizes that this meltdown is not him being defiant.
It goes right back to your smartphone battery analogy.
The battery is at 0%.
The device has shut down. The glucose is completely depleted. The prefrontal cortex can no longer regulate emotion or sustain focus. When we see a meltdown at minute 30, we are witnessing a biological failure, not a behavioral one.
That is so freeing for a parent to hear. And then you have a totally different pace with their middle child, Tyler.
Right. Tyler's an interesting case.
He is described as their slow-paced child. Before the timer, Tyler would drift through a subject for 30 to 40 minutes. He'd find, anything else to look at or think about.
Sure.
But once Eric introduced the timer, suddenly Tyler finishes in 10 to 15 minutes. The crucial detail here is the incentive structure. If Tyler finishes early and can explain the concept back to his parents, he is done. He gets his time back.
That is a phenomenal shift in educational philosophy.
Isn't it?
They're rewarding actual comprehension rather than rewarding seat time.
Yes.
In a traditional model, if you finish your math worksheet in 10 minutes, your reward is, well, another math worksheet to keep you busy until the bell rings.
Which is the worst reward ever.
It is. That just teaches a child to drag out their work. Tyler learned to focus intensely because his efficiency was rewarded with freedom.
And then you see the ultimate result of that with their oldest, Kaylee. She sets her own timer and absolutely crushes it. She'll finish English in 5 to 10 minutes, and she usually completes all of her focused brain food for the day within a single hour before she moves on to independent study.
What is essential to understand from these case studies is that they're operating in one house, using one timer, but the structure is highly customized and built around each child's unique processing speed.
Yeah, they aren't forcing 3 different brains into the same 45-minute box.
Exactly.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because now that we see the proof that this high-efficiency learning works, we need the how-to. So if I'm a parent listening to this, how do I actually start this? Do I just say go?
There has to be a structure.
Right. Lori and Eric laid out a very specific flow to make these blocks effective, 5 rigid rules. And it starts with a clear signal.
You need a clear start signal, yes. It could be the physical act of starting the timer or sitting down at a specific spot dedicated to brain food.
Like a specific desk or table.
Yes. It essentially serves as a trigger to the brain that it is time to transition into deep focus mode.
That makes total sense. But what if my kid wants to do math and, listen to an audiobook or bounce between subjects?
That brings up their next crucial finding, which is single subject focus. Multitasking is a myth, especially for cognitive acquisition.
So no switching back and forth.
Never. The brain needs one clear target. Just math or just reading. Never 2 things at once.
And that leads into the requirement for full attention, which frankly is a call-out for the adults, too. No phones, no TV in the background, no checking a quick text while they do a worksheet.
Have to be true one-on-one focus.
Which enables the next step, immediate feedback. You have to catch mistakes right then and there while their thinking is fresh. They call this perfect practice.
The immediate feedback loop is critical. If a child practices a math formula incorrectly for 30 minutes and you don't correct it until you grade the paper the next day,
Oh, man.
they have just spent 30 minutes physically wiring the wrong neural pathways into their brain.
That is terrifying.
It is. Immediate correction ensures they are only myelinating or strengthening the correct pathways.
Okay, but this next rule, this is the one I really have to push back on because it feels so incredibly wrong as a parent. The boldest, most counterintuitive rule in the entire text is this. Stop before they want to stop.
Yes. Rule number 5.
Even if they are having fun, even if they are absolutely cruising through math, you stop when the timer goes off. I have to be honest, that feels like pulling a kid out of the pool while they're still having a blast playing Marco Polo.
It does feel harsh.
It feels wrong to interrupt a groove. If they finally hit a stride, why wouldn't you let them keep going?
It does feel counterintuitive, but neurologically, it is the most vital step in the entire framework.
Really? Why?
It all comes down to associative learning and the brain's reward system. Think about the alternative. If you let a child keep going until they naturally run out of steam, how does the session end?
Well, it ends when they get tired. Or, frustrated because the math got too hard.
Right. It ends in exhaustion. Their final memory of that learning block, the emotional stamp put on that experience, is feeling depleted.
Oh, I see.
But if you force the stop before they want to stop, while they are still succeeding and feeling good, you are artificially engineering a scenario where they end on a high note.
You leave them wanting more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You wire their brain's dopamine pathways to associate brain food with success, energy, and achievement, rather than exhaustion.
That makes so much sense.
This guarantees that they come back to the table the next day with a positive attitude. It says the psychological foundation for building a lifelong love of learning, rather than a dread of schoolwork.
Wow. Okay, that completely reframes it. But if you are hearing all of this, the panic is probably starting to set in again.
The guilt.
The guilt. If the formal brain food only takes 30 to 90 minutes a day, depending on their age, you are inevitably going to feel this massive guilt. If you wrap up all formal learning by 10 a.m., you're going to feel like you are failing them. We have to address the spaces between the blocks.
This raises an important question, though. Where does that guilt actually come from?
Good point.
The source material addresses this psychological hurdle head-on. That guilt you feel, that nagging sensation that a 12-minute block couldn't possibly be enough, is simply 12 years of your own public school conditioning talking.
It's totally ingrained in us.
We have all been falsely trained by a systemic model to equate more time spent at a desk with more learning. But the biological research we discussed earlier proves that time does not equal retention.
To combat that guilt, Lori and Eric introduced this beautiful concept called the invisible classroom.
I love this concept.
It's so good. This is what runs all day, in the spaces between those highly focused blocks. It's experiential learning. They give these great practical examples to show that learning doesn't stop when the timer goes off. Like when you are cooking with your child, you aren't just making dinner.
You are facilitating applied mathematics and science.
Right.
They're physically measuring fractions, understanding volume, and observing chemical reactions as heat changes the state of ingredients.
And playing outside isn't just recess, it's physics and biology. They're experiencing gravity and momentum on a swing set.
Exactly.
Building things with tools is early engineering. Doing household chores is teaching self-sufficiency and executive function.
The transition from a focus block to the invisible classroom is what makes this entire framework viable.
It balances it out.
The short focus blocks handle the intense, concentrated acquisition of core skills, learning the actual mechanics of reading or math. But the rest of the day allows for the experiential application of those skills in a low-stress environment.
So they're still learning.
Constantly. The brain takes what it learned in those 10 minutes of intense focus and quietly synthesizes it while the child is, building a fort in the living room.
Lori and Eric actually provide a formula for this in their guide, and it is the ultimate equation for removing parent guilt. It goes like this. 60 to 90 minutes of focused brain food plus the invisible classroom running all day equals a real education.
Real education.
And they stress that a real education looks absolutely nothing like traditional school. The child isn't learning less because their blocks are short. They're actually learning more because every single minute of those short blocks is real, active, biological engagement.
It is a model of high-efficiency learning. You secure the fundamentals with precision, working with the brain's natural glucose limits, and then you allow the innate curiosity of the child to drive the rest of the day.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring it all together. The core message of Lori and Eric's framework is profoundly simple, yet totally revolutionary. You have to work with the child's brain, not against it.
That is the bottom line.
By letting go of the behavioral blame, by embracing the biological reality of attention spans, and by utilizing these heavily researched, age-appropriate 10 to 20-minute focused blocks, you ensure that every minute of learning actually sticks.
You stop fighting biology.
Right. You remove the friction, you remove the meltdowns, and you protect their love of learning by artificially stopping before they are exhausted.
It's an incredibly empowering perspective shift for anyone guiding a young mind. But, I want to leave you with a final, lingering idea to ponder on your own that extends just a bit beyond the source material we've covered today.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
If developmental biology, neurodevelopmental science, and extensive classroom research so clearly demonstrate that human brains learn best in 10 to 20-minute bursts of hyper-focused single-tasking blocks, followed immediately by experiential breaks,
Yeah.
why have we constructed adult work environments to look exactly like the failing 45-minute public school model?
Oh, wow.
If a child's brain thrives on stopping before they're exhausted, what would happen to adult productivity, creativity, and our current epidemic of burnout if we applied the focus block method to our own 8-hour workdays?
That is a phenomenal question. Are we just forcing our adult brains into the exact same exhausting boxes we force our kids into?
It's definitely something to think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We warmly invite you to take these insights, apply them to the learners in your life, and most importantly, keep questioning the structures around you. Until next time.